guys, I'm back. It's still the same day. We are on video 3, but I took a break, I come back, so I'm ready to go. I will do my best to make this video not as long as day 1. When I went to upload it earlier this afternoon, I realized that it was about 50 minutes long. I get carried away in a lesson and I just don't want to stop. I know that's kind of weird, but it's true. So I will do my best to kind of keep these lessons at about 30 to 35 minutes from this point on. So I've got a clock behind me, so I'm kind of clocking it so I know when to stop. So our end in mind is all about drawing conclusions about information that's presented in our story. So we talked a little bit about that earlier today, about what is drawing a conclusion. Really, drawing a conclusion is making a guess, but having all kinds of information to support it. So for us, it would be textual evidence primarily. Background knowledge, some, but for us, for most of the time, I'm always looking for that textual evidence. We know that our book is a science fiction book at this point. We know that because of the language that they use in their unique living situation, and we'll get into that when we start answering questions here in just a moment, and that'll make it a little more crystal clear. Vocabulary today, we have supplementary, which is additional. You will have supplementary time today to work on questions, hopefully. Adequately is enough. Affectionately is compassionately. Bewildered is confused. Nondescript is regular or normal. There's nothing out of the ordinary that kind of jumps out at you. Contribute is to add to or to give to something. Summoned is called forth, and progressed is moved forward. So these are the words that we're going to be using for the next, probably till Tuesday of next week. I would assume, if I'm breaking these lessons down into smaller chunks of time, it will take us a little bit longer to get through them than normal to get to test day. So just kind of keep that in mind. So I want us to look at our questions for day 1. So you should have written those down in your journals. So you need to have your journals open with a pencil there in case you need to make some corrections. Number 1 says, which of the following best shows that this is a science fiction story? And that is B, that everyone in the community lives in planned family units. And I actually wrote on mine, page 10, paragraph 3. And on page 10, it talks about how each family unit has one male and one female and 2 parents. And so that is a planned family unit. Now, I don't fit the mold for that family unit. My husband and I, we have 5 children. So there is no plan. Our government doesn't say you can only have 2 children. We don't live in that type of society. So when we're talking about this is a piece of science fiction, and it is something that could be taking place in the future, that's what we're talking about. So it's a planned family unit. That's not something that we do. Number 2, describe Jonas. And what do you know about him so far? Well, what we know about Jonas is pretty small at this point. We know that he's 11. He's getting ready to turn 12 in December. We know that he lives in a very unusual type of community, or that we think it's unusual. And really and truly, he's a worrier at this point. He's really worried about what the future holds for him. What is going to be announced at that ceremony of 12s? What is his job going to be? At this point, he's really struggling with that. To the point that he's sharing it at that family mealtime. Number 3, in one or two sentences, summarize how families come together in the community. So what we know about how families come together at this point is that parents apply for children. It doesn't say that just his mom and dad applied for a child. It talks about how every family unit is exactly the same. There are 50 births every year. And with those 50 births, then there are 50 babies that are given out. So you only get a baby if your application is successful. So that is a really unusual way for families to come together. It's not like, it doesn't appear to be like an adoption and a type of situation. This seems to be their norm, that nobody is having babies except these 50 that are born every year, and you have to apply for those. Another piece of that science fiction kind of weirdness. Number 4, which of the following conclusions can you draw after reading this part of the story? And I chose D, that everyone's childhood is the same in this community. And the reason that I did that is that it talks about how they all have the same birthday. You know, everybody's birthday is in December. It talks about how everybody has either a brother or a sister. They go through all the same stages and milestones together. When you're an 8 or a 9, everybody gets a bicycle at the same time. Everybody gets their first haircut at the same time. So there's no differentiation in your household. So that shows me that everyone's childhood is exactly the same. And so when we're thinking about drawing conclusions, this is a pretty good question for us to be thinking about when it says, what can you draw after reading this part of the story? This is the only one that really makes sense. And then you had to go back in and find that textual evidence to support it. Just putting that out there. So now we want to go to page 19. We're going to pick back up to our reading today. And I'm kind of going to get myself comfortable. Sorry, I'm getting hung up in my extension cord. This reading, all the videoing takes a lot more battery life than I realized. So I've got an extension cord running here to make sure that we don't go dead. Page 19 at the top. Jonas was surprised. There was no way really to know in advance. It was a secret selection made by the leaders of the community, the committee of elders, who took the responsibility so seriously that there were never even any jokes made about assignments. His mother seemed surprised too. "How could you have known?" she asked. His father smiled his gentle smile. "Well, it was clear to me, and my parents later confessed that it had been obvious to them too, what my aptitude was. I had always loved the new children more than anything. When my friends in my age group were holding bicycle races or building toy vehicles or bridges with their construction sets, or all the things I do with my friends," Jonas pointed out, and his mother nodded in agreement. "I always participated, of course, because as children, we must experience all of those things. And I studied hard in school as you do, Jonas, but again and again, during free time, I found myself drawn to the new children. I spent almost all of my volunteer hours helping in the nurturing center. Of course, the elders knew that from their observations." Jamie nodded. During the past year, he had been aware of the increasing level of observation in school, at recreation time, and during volunteer hours. He had noticed the elders watching him and the other 11s. He had seen them taking notes,
He knew, too, that the elders were meeting for long hours with all of the instructors that he and the other 11s had had during their years of school. So I expected it, and I was pleased, but not at all surprised when my assignment was announced as nurturer, Father explained. Did everyone applaud, even though they weren't surprised? Jonas asked. Oh, of course, they were happy for me, that my assignment was what I wanted most. I felt very fortunate, when his father smiled. Were any of the 11s disappointed your year? Jonas asked. Unlike his father, he had no idea what his assignment would be, but he knew that some would disappoint him. Though he respected his father's work, nurturer would not be his wish, and he didn't envy laborers at all. And his father thought, no, I don't think so. Of course, the elders are so careful in their observations and selections. I think it's probably the most important job in our community, his mother commented. My friend Yoshiko was surprised by her selection as doctor, Father said, but she was thrilled. And let's see, there was Andrea. I remember that when we were boys, he never wanted to do physical things. He spent all the recreation time he could with his construction set, and his volunteer hours were always on building sites. The elders knew that, of course, and Andrea was given the assignment of engineer, and he was delighted. Andrea later designed the bridge that crosses the river to the west of town, Jonas's mother said. It wasn't there when we were children. There are very rarely disappointments, Jonas. I don't think you need to worry about that, his father reassured him. And if there are, you know there's an appeal process. But they all laughed at that. An appeal went to a committee for study. So I want us to think about our end in mind here for just a second, about drawing conclusions. And I need evidence to support my conclusion. My conclusion is that the government carefully watches the members within their community. And my support is that I know this because the government is deciding the careers for these 12-year-olds based on their discussions they had with their teachers, by watching them in their classwork, in their spare time, looking at their volunteer hours. So the government is watching all of the members of this special, like, I don't want to say society, but I guess it's safe to say this community. Now, this question has absolutely nothing to do with our end in mind, but I want you to think about this just a minute. Most of you all are 12. You're 11, 12, or 13, just depending on where your birthday falls. Are you a true 6th grader? Did you hold back? And I want you to think about it not being able to choose, that there would be a committee that ran our neighborhoods, that watched you, that took careful notes of you, and then in December of your 12th year, they tell you what your job is going to be. You don't get to pick it. You don't get to decide. They just say, Hayden Payne, you are going to be an engineer. And you might like math, but it might not be your passion. But it doesn't matter. That is now going to be your vocation to go through for the rest of your life. That is what takes place in this particular community. And so that is another way that it is a piece of science fiction. So when we think about this futuristic setting or this futuristic city, that's another kind of tally mark that ain't happening here at this point in our lives, and maybe never. So I always think that that's kind of interesting. And how do you spend your time? Where do you think they would plug you in? Just a thought. Let's go back to our story. 21. I worry a little about Asher's assignment, Jonas confessed. Asher's such fun, but he doesn't really have any serious interest. He makes a game out of everything. His father chuckled. You know, he said, I remember when Asher was a new child at the nurturing center. Before he was named, he never cried. He giggled and laughed at everything. All of us on the staff enjoyed nurturing Asher. The elders know Asher, his mother said. They'll find exactly the right assignment for him. I don't think you need to worry about him. But Jonas, let me warn you about something that may not have occurred to you. I know I didn't think about it until after my ceremony of 12. What's that? Well, it's the last of the ceremonies, as you know. After 12, age isn't important. Most of us even lose track of how old we are as time passes, though the information is in the Hall of Open Records, and we could go and look it up if we wanted to. What's important is the preparation for adult life and the training you'll receive in your assignment. Well, I know that, Jonas said. Everyone knows that. But it means, his mother went on, that you'll move into a new group, and each of your friends will. You'll no longer be spending your time with your group of 11s. After the ceremony of 12, you'll be with your assignment group. With those in training, no more volunteer hours, no more recreation hours. So your friends will no longer be as close. And Jonas shook his head. Asher and I will always be friends, he said firmly. And there will still be school. That's true, his father agreed. But what your mother said is true as well. There will be changes. Good changes, though, his mother pointed out. After my ceremony of 12, I missed my childhood recreation. But when I entered my training for law and justice, I found myself with people who shared my interest. I made friends on a new level, friends of all ages. Did you still play at all after 12? Jonas asked. Occasionally, his mother replied, but it didn't seem as important to me. I did, his father said, laughing, and I still do. Every day at the nurturing center, I play bounce on the knee and peekaboo and hug the teddy. And he reached over and stroked Jonas's neatly trimmed hair. Fun doesn't end when you become 12. And Lily appeared wearing her night clothes in the doorway, and she gave an impatient sigh. This is certainly a very long private conversation, she said, and there are certain people waiting for their comfort object. Lily, her mother said fondly, you're very close to being an 8, and when you're an 8, your comfort object will be taken away. It will be recycled to the younger children. You should be starting to go off to sleep without it. But her father had already gone to the shelf and taken down the stuffed elephant which was kept there. Many of the comfort objects, like Lily's, were soft, stuffed, imaginary creatures. Jonas's had been called a bear. Here you are, Lily Billy, he said. I'll come help you remove your hair ribbons. And Jonas and his mother rolled their eyes, yet they watched affectionately as Lily and her father headed to her sleeping room with the stuffed elephant that had been given to her as her comfort object when she was born. His mother moved to her big desk and opened her briefcase. Her work never seemed to end, even when she was at home in the evening. Jonas went to his own desk and began to sort through his school papers for the evening's assignment, but his mind was still on December and the coming ceremony. Though he had been reassured by the talk with his parents, he hadn't the slightest idea what assignment the elders would be selecting for his future, or how he might feel about it when the day came. Now, what I'd like you to do kind of quickly for me, if you don't mind, is to go ahead and break day 2 questions down. I'm going to give you about 1.5 minutes to do that because they're a little lengthy. about 45 more seconds. All right, now the questions here seem a little more lengthy, and so we kind of want to make sure that we have broken them down appropriately. So it says, kids in the community have things called comfort objects. Do young people in our society have things like this? And then support your answer. So this particular question, you are going to have to use some background knowledge to support yes or no. So yes, young people in our society have things like this, or no, young people in our society do not. And then you have to support your answer with that background knowledge. You know, yes, why? Yes, what is it? Or no, what is it not? Number 2, explain the differences between birth mothers and other mothers. So you're going to contrast those is really what you're going to be doing. Then it says, how well respected are birth mothers? And it says support your answer. So you know you're going to give me textual evidence to support this. Are birth mothers respected? Yes or no? Or, and if it's yes, what's the textual evidence that supports a yes? Or what's the textual evidence that supports a no? So this is there's 2 questions built into this one. Number 3, what happens if a child breaks a minor rule in the community? So that's part 1. Part 2, describe whether it is a successful punishment. That's your part 2. And number 4, which of the following conclusions can you draw after reading this part of the story? So after reading everything to page 32 today, what conclusion can you draw? Is it that people in the community are vain about their appearance? Personal image is not important in the community. People in the community tease each other about their looks. Personal image is very important in the community. So whichever one of those you choose, because you'll choose only one, then you got to give evidence from the story to support your conclusion. So your conclusion is only as good as your evidence. I could say the sky is blue all day long, but if I can't prove that the sky is blue, then it's really not blue. That textual evidence is what supports your conclusion, and that's what we're looking for here. All right. So we're going to do the same thing that we did yesterday. We're going to read so much, and then we're going to stop. And then I want you to write the page number / and or paragraphs of where you are finding your answers at. Okay. So we want to make sure that we've got everything that we need there. So chapter 3. Just so I know for sure where I'm stopping, guys. Oh, look, Lily squealed in delight. Isn't he cute? Look how tiny he is. And he has funny eyes like yours, Jonas. But Jonas glared at her. He didn't like it that she had mentioned his eyes, and he waited for his father to chastise Lily. Chastise means to scold or to get on to Lily. But father was busy unstrapping the carrying basket from the back of his bicycle, and Jonas walked over to look. It was the first thing Jonas noticed as he looked at the new child peering up curiously from the basket. The pale eyes. Almost every citizen in the community had dark eyes. His parents did, and Lily did, and so did all of his group members and friends. But there were a few exceptions, Jonas himself and a female 5, who he had noticed had the different, lighter eyes. No one mentioned such things. It was not a rule, but was considered rude to call attention to things that were unsettling or different about individuals. Lily, he decided, would have to learn that soon, or she would be called in for chastisement because of her insensitive chatter. Well, Father put his bike into its port. Then he picked up the basket and carried it into the house. Lily followed behind, but she glanced back over her shoulder at Jonas and teased, "Maybe he had the same birth mother as you." Jonas shrugged, and he followed them inside, but he had been startled by the new child's eyes. Mirrors were rare in the community. They weren't forbidden, but there was no real need of them. And Jonas had simply never bothered to look at himself very often, even when he found himself in a location where a mirror existed. Now, seeing the new child and its expression, he was reminded that the light eyes were not only a rarity, but gave the one who had them a certain look. What was it? Depth, he decided, as if one were looking into the clear water of the river, down to the bottom, where things might lurk which hadn't been discovered yet. He felt self-conscious, realizing that he, too, had that look. Now, to stay true to my time limit, this is where I'm going to stop the reading today. But what I would like you to do is I'd like you to, on your team talk, to jot down an answer to what you think number 1 would be. I'd like you to do that for me kind of quickly. Just some little ideas sketched out there. And I'm going to go ahead and turn this video off, and then I'll turn it right back on and start a new video over day 4. We'll finish the reading, and then we'll talk about questions, and then we'll go from there. All right, let me go turn this off. If I can get out of the cord.